Hello, Namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to talk about our new moon that we have starting tomorrow, starting Sunday, the 11th. And this is a really big new moon in the Indian tradition because we are celebrating not only just this moon and sun coming together to start a new cycle, but we're also celebrating the new cycle seasonally. So this is the beginning of spring. It's said to be the day that Brahma, the creative aspect of the universe, the creative aspect of God is really a better way to put it, created this universe. So it's the time when everything came into being, and it's a celebration of that. And it's also a celebration of the goddess mother, of Shakti. And in many ways, that is the creation of the universe. So there's the story and the mythology around Brahma. And if you took or saw my yoga class last week, I actually told that story, the creation story of Brahma and Saraswati. But Shakti itself, the feminine energy itself, is everything that is manifest in this world. It is our bodies, it is the earth, it is the world around us that we can see, touch, feel, and experience, and that activation of it. And so Navaratri, the celebration, the 9 nights of the goddess mother that begins right at this new moon, on the first day of the new moon, is also a celebration of that manifest reality that we're all living in. And there's 2 Navaratris. There's the one in the fall, and there's this one in the spring. And they're placed there for a reason. They're in the seasonal placements of new growth, new beginnings, new openings coming from winter into spring. And then that place of fall where everything's folding back into the earth and dying and going into its winter sleep. So in the Northern Hemisphere, these placements of these 2 are very specifically related to the seasons as well, and to the earth and to nature, as is Shakti, as is the feminine energy, very related to the earth itself and our growth and our cycles. So it's the creation of the new world, or the creation of this world, occurred at this time, the celebration of the 9 nights of the goddess mother. And then on the final day, on Vijaya, which is the victory day, the 10th day after the 9th night, we also have the start of Ram Navami, which is the celebration of the birth of Ram, which is one of the avatars of Vishnu. So we have Brahma, the creating presence of the universe, or of God; Vishnu, the sustaining presence. So once something is created, Vishnu is the part of God that wants to keep it created, that wants to nurture it and allow it to maintain life. And Shiva is the destructive energy that destroys it, brings it back in to be recycled and reborn again. And the reason Vishnu is the one who manifests in avatars on earth is because of that creation, or because of that quality of nurturance, where he wants to keep something alive. So he has to come in some form to save us from our own selves, because the energy of light and dark is always getting off balance, and the darkness tends to take over and becomes so all pervasive and so hard to get rid of, that we need something to rescue us. And whenever the stories come about, especially from the Puranic tales of being saved from the demonic energy, it's almost always either an avatar of Vishnu or the goddess mother herself, who comes to save creation, to help us here in creation. And that's because the goddess mother is creation. She is everything that is. It is our bodies, our minds, our thoughts, our puffs of air that come out of our mouth, the earth, our trees, our plants. All of that is part of the goddess mother. And so she's really just saving herself, and even fighting herself, because even the demons themselves are part of her energy and part of her. And Vishnu is trying to preserve that which was created, because he's so in love with it. So this is kind of the cosmological way that the cosmological breakdown of God, of source, of energy, of how we look at it. And the celebrations of this come at this time for a reason, at this new time of year, the first month of the year, and the celebration of all that comes with that. It's also going to be the point in time when we have Akshaya Tritiya, which is more towards the end of April, the 21st and 22nd of April, where we have the moon and sun both in their place of exaltation. And this happens after the new moon in Aries, because the moon and sun will be there. The sun will be in Aries in its exalted place, and the moon will move into its exalted place at the beginning of Taurus right afterwards, because the moon moves daily, right? The moon is always moving. So with that sort of beginning part, I'm going to share my screen so you can actually look at what the placements of everything are and see from there what we're talking about. So right now we have this new moon in the very final degrees of Pisces in the star of Revati. And Revati is where we are walking each other home. It is the final star of the 27 nakshatras in the final sign of the zodiac. And it is where we've completed all the other aspects of our path, of our walk, right? Even gotten to the beginning of Pisces and had to, have the final awakening and the final dive deep into our darkest stuff in Uttara Bhadrapada, and really swallowing the poison in many ways in order to make that final journey home. Revati is ruled by Pushan, who is the shepherd, and he shepherds the flocks, right? So he's literally walking the flocks home, and we are part of that. So that peace that comes at the end of Pisces, that placement where we really feel so in tune with source, so merged with it at that point. We've sort of raged all the battles we can rage, and we're coming into a place of merging and peace, is where this new moon begins. And it's beautiful because it offers us this opportunity to, to really let go and surrender and allow ourselves to feel all the feels. At the same time, we can see this is very late degrees, and Venus was just here. I mean, today when I do this video, Venus is just now moving into Aries. So Venus is still here right now, or just moving. Mercury is still here. The sun has been here for the whole cycle, and the moon has been here for only a couple of days. So we are really experiencing the very end of this. It's a new moon in Pisces, but it's the end of a cycle that we've just experienced for the last month of all this Piscean watery energy. The quality of Pisces that allows us to be so able to merge and be so effortless in our connection to source is also the same part of us that's really escapes very easily, that has trouble bringing ourselves to presence, has trouble lifting ourselves into hard work, has trouble looking at the details of things. This is the part of us that easily escapes out of the world. It's the dreamy part of us where we want to be living in that other world, and we're not really super interested in being present in this world. And so being in water can give us that feeling, just swimming in the ocean or swimming in whatever type of water you have available to you can give you that footless feeling and that feeling of merging with everything and surrender and peace and all of that. And we've had that. We've been swimming in those waters. So this is something that we've noticed as a trend since our new moons in Virgo. We had 2 new moons in Virgo in the fall of 2020, and one was at 0 degrees and one was at 29 degrees. And ever since then, our new moons have been at the very final degrees of each sign. And so we're having a new cycle start, but having already experienced so much of that energy leading up to it. And then having the sun and moon immediately move into the sign after it, right after, which really gives the cycle a different flavor than a normal new moon cycle might feel. That feeling of initiating and starting something new is moving right into the next sign. And in this case, it's moving from water to fire. It's moving from the last sign into the freshest, newest energy. And the other thing that's going on right now is this move from all this feminine energy of water. And we had Jupiter here in Capricorn just days ago, it moved on the 5th into Aquarius, which is a male air sign. Mercury will be another, I think, a week till it moves into Aries. And here I can actually just show how quickly the moon will be moving in to Aries. The moon will be into Aries by 8:50 at night, or 8:30 at night, excuse me, Hawaii time. So we're 3 hours earlier than West Coast time here. Now, because of daylight savings time, we don't observe that. And they do in most of the US mainland. So by nightfall, the moon will already be in Aries. And then the sun will be in just a couple days. And then Mercury is only a few days behind that on the 16th. And Mars moved, when the sun moved, Mars moved from Taurus, from sidereal Taurus, into Gemini. So Taurus is an earth sign, just like Capricorn, and Mars is now into into Gemini, the male air sign. So our energy is shifting from one of earth and water into one of fire and air. Regardless of the fact that this is a new moon in Pisces, this will be our experience. We will be experiencing this shift of internalizing our energy, processing our energy, experiencing our emotions, grounding, rooting, emoting, experiencing, and moving into doing and thinking and making things happen in the external world. So this is a big shift for us to experience. I want to get it back to the new moon. Oh, I'm actually a day. Now I'm all over the place. Okay, I want to get it back to where the moon and sun are in their at least roughly where they're supposed to be together. Yep, there we are. Okay, so 4:30 p.m. Hawaii time is when we actually have the moon and sun come together, and Mercury is still there at this point. So I was just demonstrating that shift that's going to be happening. Despite this being a new cycle, it's a new cycle at the very end, and everything's going to start to shift into this more fiery and more airy energy from where we've been. And so we too are getting called right away to step out of our experience. Maybe on Sunday, we can really sit with that and really internalize, maybe meditate or be near water and really flourish in our feminine. And then we'll all be starting to take our bold steps forward into the more masculine energy right away and starting new things, new projects, just like Brahma started the new project of creating the universe and using that divine architecture to make the world in the way that it is. And the natural world is actually effortlessly working at all times, right? That we don't need to create new systems to make nature work. We actually need to create new systems that honor and respect the natural rhythms of nature, because nature is already more magnificent and amazing than anything we as humans can manhandle into place and make be the way we want it to be. The highest artists, the highest scientists, and the highest architects, if you will, are those who are completely aligned with nature and with source and are able to use that alignment in order to create something beautiful on earth that shows maybe even just a reflection of what is already created through the body of the goddess herself in nature, in that divinity. So each of the 9 nights of the goddess mother, there's a different aspect of Durga that is being honored. And also within that 9-night period, so those are the Navadurgas. Each night there's one different one and a different offering and a different prayer that can be made to her. But also there's a separation, a divide of the nights. by each of the aspects of Shakti. So the first 3 nights we're honoring and celebrating Durga herself. And in certain areas in India and Nepal, they actually reverse it. And the first 3 nights are Saraswatis, and the final ones are for Durga. So it depends on where you are, or even Kali might be how that is presented. So the fiercer form might be at the end, or the fiercer form might be at the beginning. But for my purposes here, I'm going to use Durga as the first 3 days, and then Lakshmi is the next 3 days, and then Saraswati is the final 3 days. And so in the beginning, we're accessing that part of us that has that fear and that anger, and that needs to really clear that, fight our own demons, all the different things that we have that come up that keep us from being our best and highest self. We need to be our own demon slayers and take on. And that's really what the demons are representing. There's, of course, the outer layer of it. There's external demons in the world, and there's bigger forces we need to fight. But we always have to fight our inner battles first. We always have to fight our own personal experience first. So each of us is Durga, riding on a lion or a tiger, whichever works for you. And, long flowing hair, bejeweled and full of different instruments, right? She has a mace. She has a sword. She has a bow and arrow. She has a discus. She has all these weapons. And then she also has a lotus flower for fertility. She has mala beads for prayer. Her own name is called in mantra, and that is her body itself. That is how we bring her into being. And she has the conch, the shell that makes sound, that brings forth sound, the vibration that even manifested this world to begin with. So she has all these tools at her disposal. And in the tail, there's a demon, Mahishasura, who is a shape-shifting demon who's been given a boon that he can never die by hand of man or God. He can never be killed. And so after many, many years of suffering, where he began to grow his kingdom so high that he was even taking over the kingdom of the gods, Indra, the king of the gods, began to get very concerned. And he started asking everyone else, what can we do? What are we going to do about this? And finally, a wise sage came to him and said, Indra, that boon that he has, that this demon has, only exempts him from being killed from a man or a god. He actually could still be killed by a woman. And so Indra takes all the sages and all the gods up to the loka of the goddess, and he begins to pray and meditate and chant her name and beg her to appear. And after many, many days and nights, she does. She appears before him and asks, what is it you want, Indra? As if she doesn't know. And he lays down before her and says, please, I beg of you to take care of this demon. We need you to kill this demon. And so she sets off on her lion to the palace of Mahishasura. And he sees her and is immediately attracted and thinks, wow, what a beautiful woman. I want her to be one of mine. I want her to be in my harem. And he's so blinded by his ego, he can't even see that she's the goddess. And so he tells his, minions, his Shumba and Nishumba, to go get her and bring her back to him. And she taunts them a little, and they start to get very crude and harass her. And then they pull her by her hair and try to drag her into the palace. And she immediately whips out her sword and slays them. And Mahishasura gets more and more angry, like, who is this woman? What is she doing? And I desire her, I want her. But now he's also starting to feel his fear. So he begins to send out more and more of his army of demons. And he has many. I mean, there's no end to how many demons he has. They're just pouring out of his palace. And his generals, Chanda and Munda, are coming out too. And they're starting to create such a ruckus that the goddess has to find a new path, a new way to defeat them. So she's sitting there and begins to meditate, and all these different forms of her come out. She's got the Ashta Matrikas, the 8 Matrikas. She's got the Navadurgas that come out, the Das Mahavidyas. All these different forms of her begin to come out, and they're fighting Shakti. They're all over the battlefield fighting with the demons. And it's a pretty fair battle. Mahishasura is up in his castle feeling pretty smug though, because he has an extra demon that the goddess doesn't know about yet. And this is someone who has a boon from Brahma himself, where every drop of blood that he drops on the earth, so if she kills him or in any way draws blood from him, a new demon will pop up. And so he'll just keep multiplying. He'll never stop. It's Rakta Bija. And so he sends him out because he can see the Shakti are fighting his army. And finally, even Chanda and Munda had come to pass. And so the goddess continues to sit in her meditative pose, and out of her deepest root, out of her root chakra, up rises all of her anger and all of her fear and forms her most terrible emanation yet. And out of her body pops Kali, the dark mother. She's scraggly hair. She's actually kind of withered and old looking. She's naked, save for a skirt of arms and a necklace of skulls. And she carries a curved sword, a centaur, and she starts running around the battlefield, chasing after the demons and lopping off their head. But as they drop to the ground and that blood is about to hit the earth and sprout a new demon, she rolls out her long red tongue and laps it up. And in this fashion, she's able to clear the whole battlefield of demons and keep lapping up their blood before any more come. And before too long, she's the only one on the field and she can't see anything. And she's stumbling around in the dark. And she's gotten so drunk on this quality of killing, of lapping up blood, of, being in the battle, which each of us can understand. We've all been so enraged and so wrapped up in a battle that we can't even see anymore what is what. And this is where she's at. And she starts to lose herself in this place. And at that point, she sees one more demon across the battlefield and she walks sideways and this way and she stumbles and she's so drunk on the blood that she can barely walk, but she manages to get to the figure. And when she gets to him, she's surprised he's so easy to knock down to the ground. And he just lays there like a corpse. And she puts her foot on top of him and she carries her sword over her head. And the figure just comes to namaste and says, "Please, it's me." And in that moment, she recognizes that it's her other half. It's Shiva, the corpse himself with whom she animates. And he recognizes her despite her ugly features and her crazy bloodthirsty mouth and all of her skulls and everything that makes her so gruesome. He recognizes his love. And the two of them are able to merge together and be one. At that point, Mahishasura is pissed. He comes out of the castle and he says, "You've been cheating," to Durga, who's still sitting there meditating in her lotus pose. "You have more than just you. You're fighting with all this army. You brought an army with you. You said it was just you who was going to battle me, but it's not just you. It's all these other creatures." And Durga smiles at him and she takes a breath and sucks Kali back into her body. And she sucks the Navadurga back into her body. And she sucks the Das Mahavidyas into her body. She sucks everybody back into her body and they all become one again. And she says, "They were just facets of me. They're all just part of me." And she doesn't tell him the secret that he also is just part of her. And so they battle. She on her lion, him shape-shifting, moving from buffalo to his own lion, to elephant, to this beast, to that beast. But each time she wears him down a little. And finally, she sees him in a place of vulnerability and he snaps back into his buffalo-headed form. She stabs him right through the chest as the lion jumps on him and pins him down. And he's dead. And out of the mountains and rocks and deserts and valleys, all the people come swarming, all the gods come swarming, all the sages come swarming, everybody's coming, cheering her on. Yay, yay, we're safe, it's victory, it's the victory. And this is the last day of the festival, is this victory day, Vijaya. And she turns to all of them and says, "Anytime you need me, I'm here. All you need to do is call my name." And this is the essence of the goddess, that we can call upon her at any time. It is actually through prayer, through mantra, where we actually conjure up her very being and ask her for what we need, what help we need. And personally, in this 9-night Navaratri, I've had some of the most profound experiences of my life in this time. Doing puja, saying prayer, offering what it is that I'm actually asking for. And I know, there's an idea floating around out there of prayer as something, when we're asking for things, that's coming from the ego, that's coming from our selfishness, that's coming from things we want. And that's on some level true. The truth of the matter is that if we're not asking from a place of humility and a place of surrender to whatever the results may be, then we will probably get what we want, and we will realize that maybe it's not what we actually wanted, or it will be different than how we thought. So whenever we have our ego deeply entrenched, then we're clouded in our vision of even what we're praying for to begin with. But prayer does not always have to be selfless and altruistic and, oh, I only want this for everyone else. That's not the essence of the goddess. She doesn't dislike us and our negative parts that want things that should be shamed. That's much more patriarchal value. We came here in these bodies and they do have needs, and we came here on this earth and we do have wants and desires, and pleasure is a part of that, and enjoyment of life is a part of that. And we aren't to be shamed for wanting that. That comes from a very different perspective than the goddess emanates. And so if we call her name, she will come. And I have most profoundly, when I was trying to get pregnant with my son, I had spent a year of, not quite a year by the time of Navaratri, it had been more like maybe 8 months of trying to conceive. And I'd, been counting my cycle and doing all these different methods, natural methods, but still very much based in the symptoms of the body, and trying to, outsmart your body or figure out your body, or, scientifically determine what your body's doing. And something hit me right before Navaratri. I was like, I'm really tired of all this like detail of writing things down, and there's something deeper. There's something more than just the nuts and bolts of all of this. And this, and I would say even more so for women who are on that path from a Western medicine perspective, where it's literally all about that. It's like sticks they're peeing on, and, their fertility is being told by these devices and stuff. I was using my own understanding of my body and timing to figure these things out, but it still felt very like stuck in the details, and not enough of that Piscean energy, too Virgo and not enough Pisces. It didn't feel like I was really embracing the magic and mystery of it all, or even really understanding what I was trying to do. And so during Navaratri, I set forth my intention, and there's whole prayer and puja you can do. People bring a gourd of some sort, something that's round, that filled, and they fill it with things throughout the puja, throughout the 9 nights. And on the last night, you can, destroy it or put it in the river. There's very specific prayers for each part of it. Like I said, there's the different segments of Durga and Lakshmi and Saraswati, or reverse. And there's a lot of meat in every night. So if you are interested in doing something like that, the one person that I worked with when I was doing my puja was Laura Amazone, who's an amazing tantrika and teacher, both from a very educated, sort of schooled perspective, as well as from a personal experience perspective, in her own path that she walks. So I did this puja and I set forth this intention, and I really offered it up. I was really like, if I'm not meant to be a mother, if this isn't supposed to be, then so be it. However, that maternal energy is supposed to manifest. This is what I want, but I understand if my path is different than that. And by the end of the 9 nights, on the 10th day, I had a full-on experience where I had information like downloaded into my head, literally, about what I needed to do, what I physically needed to do in order to make that happen. And I took that as a sort of a yes, yes, you can do this. And here's the instruction manual to do it. And it was very clear to me. And it had to do with moving my cycle from being one that was more attached to the full moon as opposed to the more fertile cycle of being on the new moon. And I immediately set out to do it. And I was pregnant within a couple months, within a few months. So I have found profound results from honoring this path and walking on it with integrity, really connecting to it, not just sort of going through the motions of saying the prayers and the mantras, or going through the motions of putting things, a lot of prayer, especially in the Western world, we can experience people sort of just going through the motions. But also in India, there's a lot of that where people just want to get things, and here's my money, here's my coins, here's my prayers, and not as much connection to what's actually beneath all that and what we're really trying to do, and not as much surrender to the results of whatever happens. So that's the key in any prayer and anything you're doing, is to connect in your whole entire being and to be humble in that, and to really understand that the results of it are not the most important part, or that we might not understand what it is that the results will be. We can only see what we can see in front of us now, and we don't know where that path will lead. So what we think is good or bad in this moment isn't necessarily going to equal good or bad in the next moment. The outcome that we are attached to might not feel as good as we think in that way. And one of the big things I did at that time too was really opening up my life and my understanding of where I was at with the feminine, and where I was at in that quality of even being able to be a nurturer, or being able to hold space in my life for something like bringing in a child. And also my connection to all these practices, that so much of my teachings have come not just from actual physical males, but from a masculine lineage, and being able to really understand how to personally understand and intuit each of these practices and what I'm doing, and not just have it come from this sort of, I was taught this thing didactically and I need to do this thing and these are the rules, but really starting to feel my way through it, which is a very feminine practice. So as I said, the moon is changing quickly, and we're going to move into a more masculine energy. And Durga even has that ferociousness, that fierceness about her, where we're slaying the demons, especially when we pull up that Kali part of the root chakra, and the anger and the fear and everything that we feel, and we just want to, but also the part of us that needs to balance these energies, the masculine and the feminine. And we want our actions in the world, we want our fiery and our intellectual actions to be really aligned with the place of connection to ourself, not just connection to outside things that have been taught to us. And especially in the Western world, that's not something that was taught to us very early on. In fact, sort of the opposite. We're often taught to suppress our feelings, suppress what we have to say. Many children were taught to be seen, not heard. Most of the time, whatever your problem was, it was said, no, you could only go to the bathroom if you raised your hand, and if the teacher said you could. Everything's dictated to us. And we can see it in our society now, how much that's true, how very few people really do check in with themselves, and how much we turn to the outside world for our answers. And so this is a time to really connect to your own self, and especially right on the new moon, and like Saturday and Sunday, today and tomorrow, really connect to that feminine energy while it's still there. And then whatever it is we manifest, and whatever it is we're trying to burn through in the next cycle, comes from a place of true centeredness and true connectedness. And that's really what we want to see, especially because as these planets do move. So I talked about Jupiter and Aquarius quite a bit, and there's a whole video on that. And if you haven't yet signed up for my newsletter, you should do that at www.radhahomeyoga.com, because you'll get a little breakdown of Jupiter and Aquarius for all 12 rising signs. So what it means for you, what it rules for you, and what house it's in for you, which is super fundamental to understanding these transits. So I'm not going to talk about that too much, because I have put so much time into that already. But Mars, for instance, moving to Gemini, is taking it away from Rahu, which is nice in many ways, because Rahu was dispersing our anger, but it's bringing this Mars energy into words, into communication, into speech, into the way we process things and the way we take them out again. Mars in the air signs can be very much intellectual fire. When people have natal Mars in air signs, they tend to fight with words. And the Mercury at the moment, the ruler of Gemini, is still in its sign of debilitation in Pisces. So the words aren't coming out as effortlessly or flowing. I actually had to start this video several times, which I haven't done in a couple of years. Really had to film like multiple versions of something, but I had so many errors in what I was saying. I just could not get the words out straight. And I natally have Mercury in Pisces, so I'm pretty used to having a lot of errors and making mistakes in my exact words and things like that. And it's a comfortable place for me. It's something that I just accept about myself, and I don't really spend a lot of time, trying to be somebody I'm not. But as far as Mars being in his sign, we can see that our angry words can come from a lot of confusion. They can come from a place where we're not quite able to discern things, especially because Mercury is going to be all alone now. Before Venus was joined Mercury, giving in Nichabanga, where we had, an exalted planet joined a debilitated planet. But right now, Mercury is all alone and doesn't even have the sun or anything there. So we could see some of our words of anger coming out in very strange emotional ways and not really being clear on what it is that we're getting out. And this is one of those reasons you really want to connect to yourself first, because when we connect, when we wake up in the morning and look at our phone first thing, there's like a million different things to incite you. And yes, you could have positive, affirmative things on your Facebook feed if you choose to follow the right people. But at the end of the day, that going out immediately without checking in first is our biggest failure in the world. And so not just on this moon cycle should we check in with ourselves before we go out into the world, but every day we should check in with ourselves before we go out into the world. That liminal space between sleep and waking is a secret moment. It's a time when so much can occur, and it can either just erase everything that happened in dreamland and just force us into the world, or it can be something that's very gradual, where we shift and bring some of the dream world into the waking life. And it's up to us to really control that flow. Keep your phone off on airplane mode so you're not being woken up by, ringers. Of course, some of us need to use alarms, but maybe you can make your alarm something more gentle, like chimes or something, rather than a loud banging, kind of noise. Really allowing yourself maybe to write down your dreams when you first wake up. That's something I've been doing this whole month of time where planets were in Pisces. I've been writing down my dreams when I wake up. Trying to remember them, trying to remember what was the most potent, important parts of it, meditating upon rising. All of these are wonderful ways to really check in with yourself, or just sit outside in nature, get some sun on your body, or, listening to the waking sounds of the world around you. That's a great way to check in with yourself, because then after Mercury moves out of its debilitated place, it's going to be in Aries with all these planets. And in Aries, our words are sharp and harsh. So there's not the confusion and like weird emotional thing that's directing the flow. It's that harsh, sharp energy. Now, of course, here we have an exchange of signs. We have Mercury in Aries, Mars's sign, and Mars in Mercury's sign of Gemini. So there's an exchange of signs. There's more intelligence moving. So maybe those quick words that we're saying are right on the money. But we still have to be careful about how harsh that is, especially because there's so much energy in Aries also. Especially with Venus, our other planet of relational communication, comes through Mercury, but relational, give and take, our willingness to compromise and stuff like that is Venus. And Venus in Aries is one of the most selfish placements there is. When Venus is in Aries, we have a very hard time compromising. We do it our way, and we're not really super concerned at how it affects everybody else. We're kind of just going for it. And it's a time and a place where we might have less self-care, actually, even though our desire is coming from this sort of selfish placement of we want to do what we want to do. Our self-care is not at its high point, because Aries is where we just blast forward with whatever we're doing, with the end result in view, like this is what I want to do, without really thinking about the path along the way and how we can take care of ourselves or others as we move, because it's not a slow movement, it's a fast movement. And all of these planets will be in very close degrees to each other in Ashwini, the twin horsemen that set out in a new direction, a new path. And this break from Pisces to Aries, this Gandanta point, is a big one, because, well, it's always a big one when it moves from water to fire because it's shocking to the system in many ways, but there's nothing guiding it. There's no star that guides us from water to fire. So there's a placement where, and you can see Mercury's in it right here in this example, but the moon, or excuse me, Venus, and the sun will have been in it earlier. That Gandanta point is a knot. It's something it's tied on one end, and we're not able to ease our way onto the other end. We have to like jump over a big chasm or figure out how to untie the knot to get there safely. And so it can be a very big shock to our nervous system. It can also be a part of us that is, in this particular placement, Revati is where we're walking ourselves home. But most of us are not home free, right? We're not done with our life cycles. These are cycles. It's not a line. So we didn't just walk to the end of the line. It's cyclical. And so we're starting something new again. But it was like, wow, we just finished all this energy and now we feel really peaceful. And then that shocking, abrasive wake up. It's similar to what I was just talking about when you're waking up from sleep. You can wake up with a banging alarm sound in your ear, or with, whatever you see on your cell phone, or you can wake up gradually and peacefully and guide yourself there. And this feels more like the alarm clock. This feels more like, go, you got to set off and go, even though you were just in a dreamy space, in a sleepy space. So it's something to nurture your way through if you can. Really, we can't figure our way through knots. We can't really, like, if it's a tight enough knot, you could spend all your time trying to really get in there and get it out or do this, whatever, or you can kind of surrender and allow yourself to stop pulling it tighter and tighter and allow it to loosen and unravel in its own way. And that's a lot of what we do in this world, is sort of this forced trying to make things happen. And a lot of the answer is actually in that surrender that we learn through Pisces. But especially as we're crossing from one to the next, there's a surrender that must occur. And if we're really checked in and tuned in with ourselves, our starting rhythm, our starting point that we're coming from, that fire, will be very well aligned. And it will take us very far in that initial shot. Just like if you've ever done any kind of competitive running or swimming, that opening first step you take, or that first push you take as a swimmer, into the water is key. It sets you up for everything else that you're doing. And that's where we're at right now as we move through these different celebrations. Whether or not you actually honor or celebrate these specific holidays or not is not as important as much as you understand your own rhythms and how you are in a cycle of manifestation, or how you are in a cycle of rest, and how to connect with that, so that you're in sync with yourself. And once you're in sync with yourself, you can start being in sync with nature, or you can use nature as a way to bring yourself back into rhythm. For a new baby or even an older child, their heartbeat and everything is regulated by their mother. Well, so are we regulated by our mother nature, right? By our earth mother. So even just earthing on the ground or being in water, being near the elements, can help us regulate and bring ourselves back. So as we move into the fiery Aries energy, being near fire can help us magnetize and attract and really understand how to move in the direction of our dharma, of our truth, not just in the direction that we're dictated from all these other places, or some confused idea we have of what it is we're supposed to achieve. And this, of course, can be really helpful when you have readings, because then you know exactly where things are in your chart and what everything's ruling and what houses these are for you, because it makes a big difference for each of us where it is in our chart. So again, I do a lot of free forecasts. I do a lot of free reports for all 12 signs. Right now, you have the Jupiter and Aquarius for all 12 signs sending out from my website. And also still Rahu and Ketu, the North Node and the South Node in this placement, that is also a report sending out for all 12 signs. So if you're not on my email list yet, you can do that. And if you want to book a reading and get a little bit more clarity on all of this for yourself, you can do that too. But one way or another, however you honor these next few days or these next 9 nights, I wish you a lot of peace and a lot of alignment with yourself. So your path forward is one that is really yours and not sort of borrowed. So happy new moon, happy Navaratri, happy Ram Navami, and happy birth of the world. Namaste.